Why was the antenna shuddering against a wind that didn't exist? Corporal Ward froze on the rooftop, her hand still on the tuning dial, the desert air cool on her cheeks. Something was wrong. She had traced circuits, adjusted voltages, and tightened bolts 1,000 times before, but this vibration pulsing through the dish was different. It felt alive. Her headset hissed with static, then broke into words. Not American voices. Not clipped English transmissions from Falcon's command net. Something foreign, something controlled. Her chest tightened as the syllables rolled through her ear in a dialect she recognized from endless intelligence briefings, but had never expected to hear with her own ears. Convoy enters kill zone at 7:30. Roadblock already in position. Artillery staged on the northern ridge. She gripped the cold metal edge of the dish as if it were the only thing keeping her upright. Her watch read 5:48. Less than 2 hours. A convoy she hadn't even known existed was already fated to die on a mountain road. She adjusted the dial carefully, painfully slowly, like a thief forcing a lock. Another voice cut in. Primary target, Eagle Convoy. Secondary objective, neutralize high-value officer. Designation. Stomach lurched. Wasn't just anyone. It was Colonel Hale, the man who commanded the entire sector, the same officer scheduled to inspect forward positions that very morning. He would be traveling with that convoy, laughing with his men, expecting a routine movement. And somewhere beyond these ridges, unseen artillery crews were already waiting to bury him in fire. Her heart pounded. She should call it in. Protocol demanded verification, documentation, chain of command. Submit through channels. Wait. But wait meant death. By the time her words climbed the ladder of military procedure, Eagle Convoy would already be halfway into the trap. Ward! The voice jolted her like a slap. She turned. Sergeant from the watchtower stood in the doorway to the roof, his silhouette framed by rising sunlight. He frowned. Control said wind damage. Just realign it and get down. Her mind ran calculations at lightning speed. If she told him, he would insist on reporting through proper channels. 2 officers minimum. Verification. Time they didn't have. The convoy would be dead before her words carried weight. She forced her shoulders loose, made her voice flat. Almost done. Just checking the frequency modulator. The voices in her ear continued. Grid coordinates, timing, laughter. The sound of men already sure of their kill. Kept her head down, fingers moving as though working, but her mind burned with urgency. She closed the panel and deliberately left the dish misaligned, just enough to keep catching the enemy signal without anyone suspecting. With unhurried motions, she packed her toolkit, nodded to, and started down the stairs. Each step thudded like a hammer against her ribs. In the shadow of the stairwell, she yanked her notepad free and scrawled furiously. Coordinates, timetable, enemy armor positions. The words carved themselves into the paper, precise and cramped, her hand shaking only once. She wasn't fixing an antenna anymore. She was trying to stop a war before it started. The problem was access. She was just Corporal Ward, the quiet repair technician, the one with grease under her nails and a toolkit on her hip. The colonel had never even spoken her name. She wasn't cleared for command floors, much less a private word with Hale. But she also knew she couldn't walk away. Her boots crunched gravel as she crossed the compound toward the command wing. Every step was a gamble. She rehearsed in her head, facts only, no speculation. Just the transmission exactly as heard. No emotion, no trembling. And then, Ward! The second time her name stopped her, the voice was harder, flatter. Lieutenant, stocky, square-jawed, blocking the corridor that led to the ops floor. His eyes flicked to her badge. Communications maintenance. You're not cleared here. Sir, she said, keeping her voice firm, I intercepted an unsecured transmission. Critical intelligence regarding an imminent threat to Eagle Convoy. Scowl deepened. File a SIGINT report. Wait for processing. That's procedure. She glanced at the wall clock. 6:14, barely over an hour until the kill zone. Her throat tightened. Sir, with respect, they're planning an ambush at 7:30. If I wait for processing, the convoy will be in it before my report leaves your desk. And with respect, Corporal, you are out of line, snapped. You don't walk into a colonel's office with unverified chatter. Submit through channels dismissed. The weight of hierarchy pressed down like chains. Years of drilled obedience screamed at her to say nothing more. She forced her voice flat, her hand tightening around her toolkit until her knuckles whitened. Yes, sir. She turned away, walking with controlled steps. But once she cleared the corner, she ducked into a maintenance closet, shut the door, and pulled her small field radio from the toolkit. Static hissed. She flipped frequencies, listening. Snatches of pre-mission chatter bled through. Convoy Eagle, departure confirmed for 700. Her pulse spiked. They were already loading up. She keyed the mic, her voice trembling but steady. Eagle 3, this is comms 2. Do you read? A pause, then, this is Eagle 3, identify yourself. Ward, Corporal, communications repair. She swallowed hard. You're heading into a kill zone. Pass. Northern Ridge. Enemy armor in position by 7:10. I repeat, abort route. The silence that followed seemed to stretch into infinity. Finally, Corporal, that's a serious claim. Source. Source is me. Southern Array intercept. No time to confirm, you need to reroute now. Another pause. Her hands shook over the mic. Copy comms 2, standing by. The closet door slammed open. Light poured in, blinding her. Lieutenant stood there with 2 MPs, their expressions grim. Corporal Ward, he said coldly, you are detained for breach of protocol and unauthorized transmission. Hands clamped on her arms. Her radio clattered to the floor. You think you can play hero, sneered. You could be feeding false intel straight to a live convoy. They're walking into an ambush, she shot back, struggling against the grip on her wrists. If you wait for confirmation, they'll be dead. Enough, barked, secure her. The MPs dragged her through the corridors. Soldiers stared, whispered. Heart pounded, not from fear of arrest, but from a single question eating her alive. Had Eagle 3 believed her? Would they reroute, or would they drive straight into the kill zone because she had been silenced? The cell was small, cold. Concrete walls, a heavy steel door. They stripped her of her toolkit, her notepad, her radio. Left her with nothing but time and the suffocating weight of failure. She paced, counted seconds. Minutes bled into an hour. 7:12. By now, the convoy would be entering the pass. She pressed her forehead against the wall, teeth clenched, unable to silence the images in her head. Trucks exploding, soldiers screaming, a colonel's body burning in twisted steel. At 7:48, the door opened. Turned, expecting MPs. Instead, Colonel Hale himself stepped inside. He was taller than she imagined, lean, eyes sharp as flint. His uniform bore quiet authority, not ceremony. His gaze cut through her in a single glance. Corporal Ward, he said, his voice low, you want to tell me why my convoy just avoided driving into a tank trap? Her knees nearly buckled. Relief flooded her so hard it made her dizzy. Sir, she managed, coming to attention, I intercepted enemy communications. They were targeting your convoy, you specifically. He studied her in silence. Finally, you were right. Eagle 3 diverted based on your warning. They found exactly what you described, armor on the North Ridge, a roadblock at the pass. You may have just saved 12 lives, including mine. Should have felt triumph. Instead, she felt only a hollow exhaustion, the aftermath of adrenaline and fear. Thank you, sir. His eyes narrowed. But you bypassed procedure, contacted the convoy directly, accessed a rooftop frequency without authorization. He leaned closer. If you're going to keep doing that, you'd better be right every damn time. It wasn't praise, but it was close enough. Swallowed hard, understood, sir. And for the first time, The quiet repair technician realized she wasn't invisible anymore. She was marked. How long could you stand being watched, knowing half the room doubted you? 3 days after the convoy ambush that never happened, Ward sat in the operations room, her uniform stiff with nerves, a mug of untouched coffee cooling at her side. The map screens glowed in dim light, grids stretching across the desert, the pass outlined in red. She felt every pair of eyes that landed on her. Some curious, some grudgingly respectful, some whispering lucky guess when she passed. Lieutenant didn't whisper, he simply ignored her. No words, no glances, as though she had ceased to exist, which in a way was worse. Colonel Hale studied her notepad again, the scribbled coordinates she had on the rooftop. "You had no authorization to make that call," he said, his tone calm but edged with steel. "But you also had no reason to know these details unless you heard them firsthand." Her jaw clenched. "I heard them, sir, exactly as I wrote them." He leaned back, watching her carefully. "And you understand what that means, Corporal. They know. Whoever was transmitting that chatter now knows someone at Falcon picked it up." His voice dropped lower. "You've made yourself visible." Her throat dried. She had wanted recognition, but not like this. Not as a target. By morning, the orders were signed. A clean sheet of bureaucratic language that shifted her life. Corporal Ward reassigned. Temporary special attachment, signals intelligence and field reconnaissance. Her badge changed, her patch changed, her world tilted. She returned to the communications floor only long enough to collect her belongings. Some soldiers nodded to her in quiet respect. Others muttered fluke or hero complex. She didn't care which was worse. At 900 the next day, she was back on a rooftop, but not the southern array, not a repair job. This time she sat beside a secure directional dish, flanked by 2 security soldiers who watched the horizon with rifles at the ready. Her headset pressed against her ears, her notepad ready. She wasn't fixing anything. She was listening. Hours passed. Static, garbled voices. Heat shimmered off the rooftop until her skin prickled with sweat. She leaned into the white noise, tuning, adjusting, chasing shadows. And then, a voice, deep, familiar. The same voice that had laughed over ambush coordinates 3 days earlier. "Falcon Base has a leak. Source unknown. Sweep for female comms tech. Terminate quietly." Blood iced over. They knew. Not just that their chatter had been intercepted, they knew her. She scribbled the words down, every letter precise despite the tremor in her hands. The guards beside her shifted uneasily. "Everything okay, Corporal?" She forced her voice steady. "Fine. Not yet." She wasn't ready to speak the words aloud, not until she understood what they meant. She tuned further. Another voice bled through. "Contact inside Falcon confirmed. Compensation doubled if taken alive." Alive, the word clung to her like oil. She ripped the headset off, heart hammering. Then she marched straight to Colonel Hale's office. She bypassed the checkpoint this time with her new badge, her boots striking hard against the floor. Hale listened silently as she repeated what she had heard. His face remained carved from stone. When she finished, he leaned forward, elbows on the desk. "You have 2 choices," he said. "Protective custody or stay operational." She didn't hesitate. "I'm not hiding." His eyes narrowed. "If you stay watched, sidearm everywhere. Someone shadows you at all times, understood?" Her breath steadied, understood. That evening her orders came down. She would deploy overnight to an observation post outside the wire. High ground, isolated, perfect for intercepting long-range communications, and perfect, though no one said it aloud, for someone to try again. The outpost was little more than a concrete box perched on a bluff overlooking the eastern approach to Falcon. The desert stretched endless and cold beneath a canopy of stars. A young specialist with jumpy energy served as her assigned shadow. He checked his rifle for the 3rd time in an hour while adjusted the slow-moving dish. Hours dragged, static, pirate radio, Helicopter rotors in the distance. Does jerking awake with guilty starts, kept listening. Then voices clear, deliberate. Target will be at Echo Post until 400. Approach from South Ridge. No shots until inside. Her chest locked, she grabbed the field radio. Echo Post to Falcon, hostile intent chatter, South Ridge approach, multiple contacts. The radio crackled, then died, silence. The desk lamp flickered and went dark, power gone. From outside came the crunch of boots on gravel, slow, measured, more than one set. Jerked awake, rifle raised. No power means no sensors, he whispered. We're blind. His hand found the sidearm Colonel Hale had forced on her. The weight was foreign, heavy, cold. She moved to the slit window. Shapes shifted against the ridge, 3, maybe 4. One carried a long rifle, its suppressor glinting faintly under the starlight. His whisper was tight with panic. Back door, we can make it to the ravine. Before she could answer, a voice carried through the wind, calm, mocking. Corporal Ward. The accent was unmistakable. You've been listening to the wrong people. The outpost seemed to shrink. His heartbeat pounded in her throat. She didn't move, didn't answer. Signaled with his fingers, 3 silhouettes circling, boots scuffed stone, metal scraped. Someone tried the side door. Crouched by the portable comms booster, dark and dead. Their only chance now was noise, enough gunfire to summon help. The door shuddered under a kick, splinters cracked, then another strike. A shadow burst through, tall, armed, desert camo that wasn't theirs. His rifle rose, fired first. The intruder crumpled against the wall, but not before his weapon discharged, the muffled thump of a suppressed round slamming concrete inches from his head. She dropped to a crouch, raised her pistol and fired twice. Training range, muscle memory carried her. The figure collapsed. Outside, more whispers, movement along the south wall. They'll breach again, hissed. We can't hold. His mind spun back to the rooftop, to coordinates and doctrine. They'd come from the south wall. It was textbook. She slipped through the maintenance hatch at the back, boots landing silent in the sand. The night air hit her lungs like ice. She crept along the ridge, circling behind the advancing figures. 2 men approached the outpost, rifles ready, their silhouettes sharp against the stars. They thought she was cornered. She leveled her pistol, exhaled, squeezed twice. One fell instantly. The other spun, firing wildly. Rounds sparked against stone inches from her. She dove behind a boulder, adrenaline blinding her vision. Then's rifle cracked from inside, catching the second man in a crossfire. Silence, the desert wind sighed. Waited, counting heartbeats. Then crept forward, checking bodies, both dead. One carried a small satchel. She opened it. A comms pack. Forward reconnaissance grade. She thumbed it on static, then a channel. Falcon, this is Ward, she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Hostiles engaged at Echo Post. South Ridge compromised. Request immediate QRF. The reply came sharp. Copy Ward, Raven team inbound, ETA 6 minutes, hold position. 6 minutes, a lifetime in combat. She signaled. They crouched against the wall, weapons ready, eyes on the darkness. And then the sound, the deep rhythmic whoop-whoop of helicopter blades. Twin descended on the ridge, rotors whipping sand into storms. Boots hit the ground, 6 soldiers in black tactical gear moving with predatory precision. Raven team. Their leader pulled his scarf down, revealing a jaw. Corporal Ward. Yes, sir. Captain Decker, Raven team. Colonel Hale sends his regards. He glanced at the bodies. Nice shooting. Only when they were airborne again, sandstorm fatting beneath, did's body begin to shake. She had been hunted, targeted, and she had survived. Not through luck, through instinct, training, will. Back at Falcon, dust still swirling around the pad, Colonel Hale met her with an unreadable expression. She handed him the comms pack with trembling hands. They were here for me specifically, sir. He studied her a long moment. Then he pulled a patch from his pocket, a stylized bird of prey against black, 3 words beneath, unseen, unheard, unbroken. "Raven Team," he said, pinning it to her sleeve. "Welcome to the squad, Corporal Ward. Looks like you're done fixing antennas." The weight of it sank into her. She was no longer invisible. She was no longer safe. And for the first time in her life, Ward understood what it meant to become the hunted, and to decide in that moment to become the hunter. How much pain could a body take before the mind broke first? Ward found out on her 3rd morning as a raven. Captain Decker's voice had been merciless at 400, 5 miles, full kit, move. The desert air still clung to the night's chill, but within minutes sweat soaked her uniform, her breath tearing through her lungs. Sand crunched under her boots, each step like glass shards slicing into muscle. By mile 3, she thought she couldn't go farther. By mile 4, she hated herself for being slower than the former ranger who ran like he'd been born in combat gear. By mile 5, she wanted to quit, until Decker barked, "Time," and her legs folded beneath her in the dust. And that was just the warm-up. Weapons training followed. Not just rifles she knew, but sleek black weapons she'd never seen before. Decker handed her one like a ritual offering. MK-17, modified SCAR-H, range 800 meters. Learn to breathe with it. She did. For the first week, she was required to sleep with it within arm's reach even in the shower. She stripped it blindfolded, reassembled it until her fingers knew every pin and spring as though they were part of her body. But weapons weren't the heart of Raven training. The cage was. Buried beneath Falcon's secure wing, the cage was a windowless room lined with radios and intercept equipment spanning 50 years of war. The air smelled of dust, ozone, and coffee gone stale. Its lights never dimmed. Its clocks never mattered. Time dissolved in the cage. Technical Sergeant ran it, a small man with restless fingers and eyes like twin microscopes. "The human ear," he said the first day, "is the best filter on Earth. Computers can catch signals. Only you can hear the difference between noise and meaning." And so she listened. 12 hours a day, a headset clamped to her skull, static hissing, voices bleeding in and out of language, code, laughter. Some transmissions were live, bleeding through the mountains. Others were recorded fragments from past wars, would stop her without warning. What was said at the 13-minute mark? She would close her eyes, hear it. A patrol ordered west, supply trucks delayed. Correct again. It was exhausting, brutal in its own way. At night she dreamed in static, woke with phantom voices still echoing in her ears. Her brain felt rewired, stretched on fire. But something strange happened. The chaos began to separate itself, as though her mind had grown new muscles. Voices emerged from noise like instruments surfacing from an orchestra. She began to hear cadence, rhythm, urgency. A sigh in the middle of a word meant deception. A clipped pause meant truth. One evening, as she pulled the headset off with shaking hands, she overheard murmur to Decker, "She's got the ear." The ear, the highest praise in Raven circles. It should have felt like triumph. Instead, it felt like a burden. If she could hear what others missed, then she could no longer pretend she was ordinary. But Raven Team was never ordinary. Her quarters changed. She now lived in the secure wing, sharing space with 3 others, all muscle and restless energy, haunted by things he never said. Quiet, a genius with electronic warfare systems, the signals wizard who seemed to live without sleep. They accepted her without questions. No rituals, no jokes. In Raven, only results mattered. 6 weeks blurred into muscle pain, gun oil, static. Her body hardened. Her ear sharpened. Yet she still felt like an outsider, carrying the quiet shame of a comms tech who'd once been invisible. Until the briefing. It was late afternoon when Decker called her in. Colonel Hale stood waiting, alongside a civilian in a rumpled khaki suit whose pale eyes scanned her like an X-ray. "Corporal Ward," Hale said, gesturing for her to sit. This is Mr. Intelligence Analysis. She stiffened in the chair, her fatigue burned away by the weight of their attention. Tapped a pen against a folder. I've read your reports, thorough, but I'm interested in what you didn't write down, anything odd, a phrase, a name, something that didn't fit. Closed her eyes, forcing herself back to the rooftop. The voices, the laughter, the cold precision. And then, there was something, she said slowly. After the coordinates, one voice said, "The falcon will tell the eagle when it's time." I assumed it was metaphor, base and convoy, nothing actionable. Hale and exchanged a look sharp enough to cut the air. "That wasn't in your report," Hale said. "No, sir, it didn't seem relevant." Leaned forward. "It's a recognition code. We've seen it before, very specific contexts." He looked at Hale. "She's ready." "Ready for what?" Hale's eyes held hers. "Operation Goldfinch." He slid a folder across the table. "Classified beyond top secret. What you're about to hear doesn't leave this room." Inside, a single photograph. Grainy long lens. A man in his 50s with silver-streaked hair and eyes that cut like razors. Amir said, "Former military intelligence. Now coordinator for a network planning attacks across 4 countries, including the ambush you helped prevent." Studied the photograph. "What's the connection?" "The Falcon and the Eagle," said. "A Soviet-era deception operation. It manipulates what we hear. They wanted us to reroute the convoy. The ambush was a feint. The real target was elsewhere." Her breath caught. "You think they let me intercept it?" "Yes," Hale said. "Not you specifically, but the transmission was bait." The photograph seemed to stare back at her, eyes cold, calculating. "And you think I can help?" she said. Decker's voice was quiet but firm. "You know their cadence, their patterns, and they know your face. That makes you vulnerable and valuable." "Bait," she said flatly. "An asset," Hale corrected. "One they want alive. That tells us something important. They think you heard more than you reported." Her mouth went dry. She remembered the satchel at Echo Post, the voice calling her name through the dark, the word alive. Decker leaned closer. "This isn't standard deployment. You have a choice. If you say no, you continue training. No penalty, no black marks, but if you say yes." Her fingers brushed the photograph. His hard eyes burned into her. She thought of convoy trucks that never burned, of men she had never met but had saved. She thought of the ones who had come to kill her in the night. "When do we start?" Silence fell. Hale exhaled. Decker gave a single tight nod. And Ward, once invisible, understood she had stepped onto a path with no way back. What did silence sound like when every nerve in your body was screaming? The truck's engine rumbled beneath Ward as she sat crammed in the back with, and 2 other Ravens. The desert night pressed close, its stars sharp as needles above the rolling dunes. The convoy of 3 unmarked vehicles moved without headlights, guided by night vision and the instinct of drivers who had done this before. Her fingers brushed the headset clamped around her neck. This wasn't a repair mission. This wasn't a simulation. This was her first live field op. She wasn't here to fix anything. She was here to listen. Operation Goldfinch. That was the word stamped into every page of the file she'd studied for 40 sleepless hours. The mission was simple in briefing. Cross the border, intercept a secure relay suspected of feeding network, extract data, return unseen. Simple words, terrifying in reality. "Ward," Decker's voice came low across the truck bed. "Rules tonight are simple. You speak when you have something and you keep your head down when you don't. We do the rest." She nodded though her stomach churned. "Yes, sir." Grinned, teeth white in the dark. "Don't worry, kid. First time's always the worst. After that, you just start collecting scars." Gave him a look sharp enough to cut, not helping. The trucks rolled to a stop just before the ridge. Engines cut. The desert fell into that awful, suffocating silence that only comes when men prepare to move. They dismounted, Sand crunched. Pack felt twice its weight as she followed the others up the incline. Her knees burned. Sweat trickled despite the chill. She wanted to look anywhere but at the night where shapes might be waiting. At the ridge, Decker dropped to a knee, scanning through thermal optics. He gestured, 2 fingers forward, split, and moved like shadows taking flanks. Stayed close, pulse hammering. And then she heard it. Not through the headset, not electronic, her own ears. Voices on the wind, faint but real. Men speaking Arabic in low tones, laughter cutting through. She froze. Stop. The word slipped out before she realized. Decker tensed. What is it? She strained, head tilted. 2, maybe 3 by the relay, laughing, not patrol rhythm, waiting. He studied her, then signaled hand silence. Flanked further left, belly low in the sand. Tapped his rifle, eyes locked forward. Decker raised his hand. 1, 2, 3. The ravens flowed downhill. Followed, heart slamming, every grain of sand shifting like thunder under her boots. They reached the low concrete hut that housed the relay. A single antenna jutted skyward, silhouetted against the stars. Its faint red light blinked like a heartbeat. Inside, the laughter cut off, boots scuffed, a rifle cocked. The firefight was short. Went in first, gunfire cracking like whiplash. Stayed crouched behind the doorway, ears ringing, the copper taste of adrenaline flooding her mouth. When it was over, 2 bodies lay still on the floor. The relay equipment hummed quietly, oblivious to death. Shoved a drive into the relay's port. Data began to transfer, a progress bar crawling across his screen. Decker kept his rifle steady at the door, checked pulses, unnecessary. Forced herself to step inside. The bodies were young, not the hardened faces she'd imagined, but boys not much older than she had been when she joined. Their eyes still open, staring at nothing. Her throat tightened. She turned away. Focus. She was here to listen, not to feel. The drive chirped. Transfer complete. Yanked it free. Got it. Move, Decker ordered. They pulled out fast, leaving the bodies where they lay, tried not to look back. The return to the trucks was tense, every shadow a threat, but the desert held its silence as though the night itself was watching. Back across the border, Falcon's lights appeared like distant stars on the horizon. His body finally unclenched, relief washing through her. The mission was done, data in hand, alive. But when they rolled through the gate, something was wrong. The base buzzed with an energy she hadn't felt before. Soldiers clustered in knots, voices sharp, eyes narrowed. An MP Jeep tore past them, lights flashing, heading for the ops building. Decker swore under his breath. Something happened. They were hustled straight into debrief. Colonel Hale was already waiting, jaw tight, eyes darker than usual. Sat beside him, the khaki suit more wrinkled than remembered, his pen tapping furiously. Report, Hale snapped. Decker laid the drive on the table. Relay secured, 2 hostiles down, data intact. Any complications? None worth nodding, standard contact. Hale's eyes flicked to Ward. She swallowed, confirmed voices before contact, non-patrol cadence, they were waiting. A flicker crossed face, approval, calculation, she couldn't tell. Then Hale dropped the hammer. While you were gone, a secure channel inside Falcon was breached. Transmission sent at 200. Exact coordinates of your relay op. Enemy knew you were coming. The room went still, felt the air leave her lungs. Sir, Decker said, low and sharp, we neutralized 2 at the site. They weren't expecting ravens. Because they weren't meant to stop you, said coldly. His pen clicked once. They were meant to watch you. Stomach sank. They wanted us to bring the data back. Didn't deny it. That drive may be contaminated. Code, traps, we'll comb it. But the bigger problem, he leaned forward. There's a leak inside Falcon. The words hit harder than gunfire. A traitor, inside their own walls. Hale's eyes shifted too. They asked for you alive, they fed us bait. Now they knew exactly where you were. The leak is close, very close. Her mind reeled. She thought of the ambush, the voice calling her name, the satchel at Echo Post. Someone inside Falcon wanted her dead or captured. Someone who walked the same halls, ate the same rations, saluted the same flag. She clenched her fists beneath the table, then find them. Studied her, unblinking. That's exactly what you're going to help us do. Her blood ran cold. Me. You're the ear, said. The leak doesn't know what you've heard. That makes you the bait they keep chasing, which means we listen back. We set the trap this time. Decker's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Sat frozen, the weight of it pressing down. She had once been invisible, fixing antennas. Now she was being turned into a weapon, bait dangled before enemies and traitors alike. And for the first time, she wondered, not whether she could survive, but whether she could live with what survival required. How do you walk among friends, knowing one of them wants you dead? Ward lay awake in her bunk, staring at the ceiling, the raven patch on her sleeve heavy against her skin. The words wouldn't leave her. There's a leak inside Falcon. The barracks were quiet, save for restless breathing across the room and near-silent turning of pages in the cot beside her. Ordinary sounds, familiar, yet every one of them cut deeper than static on a radio. Who was it? Which voice would betray her first? At dawn, Captain Decker gave the order. Counterintelligence op. The leak thinks Ward is operational bait. Good, we'll use that. She'll move under controlled cover. Raven shadows. We'll trace the signal back when they make their move. He said it like it was clean, controlled, but heard what he didn't say. She would walk into the open, unarmored. She would be the match held to gasoline. They began with misdirection. Orders drafted on false headers. A convoy assignment stamped with her name in bold. Corporal Ward attached to Eagle Company, forward recon. The kind of detail a traitor couldn't resist. By noon, the message had been sent across Falcon's network. By midnight, it would leak. And somewhere beyond the wire, someone would set a trap for her. Kept her face steady as she moved through the halls that day. But inside, every glance lingered too long. Every casual question sounded loaded. Even the lieutenant who had once tried to bury her under protocol nodded politely in the corridor. Too polite. Brought her lunch, a gesture she might once have welcomed, but she found herself staring at the tray, wondering if the traitor needed poison when bullets worked faster. Her stomach knotted. She pushed the food away untouched. The waiting was worse than action. She wore the headset through the night in the cage, static hissing in her skull, searching for whispers of her own name. She heard chatter about convoys, raids, weapons caches, but nothing about her. Until dawn. Eagle Company rode west at 900, Ward traveling with them. Gift for deliver her alive. Her blood turned to ice. They'd taken the bait. She tore the headset off and sprinted down the corridor, nearly colliding with. They bit, she gasped. West Road, 900, they know my name. The analyst didn't blink, then let them have it. Her chest tightened. You want me to go? You want to prove yourself, Raven. This is how. You walk into the fire and you trust your team to pull you out. She wanted to argue, to scream that she was a soldier, not a pawn, but appeared behind her, adjusting his rifle strap, his grin hard but encouraging. Relax, kid. We'll be closer than your own shadow. So she went. At 8:30, she sat in the back of a Humvee marked Eagle Company, helmet strapped, rifle across her lap. Every bump of the dirt road jarred her bones. Ahead, the convoy stretched, 2 troop carriers, 1 armored truck. Soldiers chatted idly, unaware of the trap tightening around them. Her headset pressed against her ears, tuned to a frequency had seeded just for this. The leak's reply would lead them back to the source. She only had to endure the ride. But with every mile, the silence grew heavier. At 9:05 she heard it. Convoy Eagle confirmed. Ward is inside. Contact will intercept at Switchback Road. Secondary trigger at Falcon Supply Depot. Repeat trigger inside Falcon. Her breath caught Supply Depot, inside. She grabbed the radio. Decker, they're planning a simultaneous hit inside Falcon. Someone on base will strike when they think I'm taken. Static, then Decker's voice clipped and urgent. Copy, keep rolling, we're already closing the noose. The convoy slowed at Switchback Road, engines growling as they climbed the curve. Skin prickled, her ears strained. Then gunfire. The first shots came from the ridge. Bullets cracked against armored plating. Soldiers dove for cover, shouting. The convoy ground to a halt. Smoke blossomed from the lead truck. Contact front. Ducked low, heart hammering, she reached for her headset. Through the chaos, she caught the chatter. She's there, Humvee 2, move in. Her blood ran cold. They knew exactly where she sat. A figure rose from the rocks, rifle raised. Froze, the weight of her weapon foreign, but wasn't frozen. He dropped the shooter with a clean burst, then shouted, "Move, kid." She scrambled from the Humvee, bullets whipping sand into her face. Pulled her behind cover, his laptop already open, antenna extended. "They're transmitting live," he muttered. "Someone's feeding them updates from Falcon right now." She pressed her headset, forcing herself through the storm of noise. Static, shouting, then clear as a bell. Ward compromised, switched to depot trigger, initiate at 9:30. Her pulse spiked. Decker, they're switching. They'll hit Falcon Supply at 9:30. Someone on base is pulling the trigger. The answer came back like gravel. Copy. Raven 2 already moving to secure. Focus on staying alive. But staying alive was no longer enough. Leaned from cover, sighting the ridge. She had no sniper skill, no perfect aim, but she fired anyway. The recoil slammed her shoulder. She saw a figure stagger and fall. Her first confirmed kill. The firefight dragged like an eternity. By the time Raven pulled her clear, her ears rang, her throat burned, and her hands shook uncontrollably. But she was alive. Back at Falcon, the second hammer dropped. The supply depot erupted in flames. Plumes of black smoke curled above the base. Alarms wailed. Soldiers ran, shouting, dragging hoses. The air reeked of burning fuel. Colonel Hale's voice carried like a whip. "Lock it down. Nobody leaves until we find who planted that device." But already knew. She replayed the voice she'd heard giving the trigger code. Calm, precise, too familiar. She closed her eyes, blood draining from her face. It was not some nameless clerk. It was the signals wizard, the man who had taught her to hear the difference between noise and meaning. Her mentor, her anchor in the cage. The voice had been his. Her stomach turned, bile burning her throat. She wanted to be wrong. She prayed she was wrong, but in her bones she knew. Was the leak. And he had just set Falcon on fire. How do you listen to a man's voice after realizing it was the one that betrayed you? Ward sat in the debriefing room, the fluorescent lights buzzing faintly above her, the smell of smoke from the depot still clinging to her uniform. Across the table, Colonel Hale paced, his jaw tight, his boots heavy against the concrete floor. Captain Decker leaned against the wall, arms crossed. And in the middle sat her mentor, her teacher in the cage, his hands cuffed to the steel table, his eyes calm. "Tell me I'm wrong," whispered before she realized she'd spoken aloud. His gaze flicked to her. No fear, no apology, just recognition. "You heard me," he said softly. His voice was the same one that had guided her through static, corrected her cadence, praised her ear. "I knew you would. That's why they wanted you alive." Decker slammed a fist against the wall. "Don't you dare turn this into admiration, you son of a—" "Quiet," Hale snapped. He dropped into the chair opposite, his stare like steel. "Why?" Shrugged faintly. "Because Falcon isn't what you think it is. Because orders are written in blood before you even see the ink. Because someone had to balance the scale." Snails dug crescents into her palms. "Balance," her voice cracked raw. You burned our own depot. You fed them my name. You tried to have me killed." His eyes softened, not guilty, not ashamed, but something worse, pity. "You still believe in sides, that's why they chose you. You hear everything, but you don't understand it yet." Her throat closed. The man who had taught her to hear the difference between noise and meaning was now speaking in riddles, betrayal wrapped in philosophy. Hale stood abruptly. "I don't have time for this, Decker." But cut him off. "No," her voice steadied even as her body trembled. "I need to hear him, alone." Hale's eyes narrowed. "That's not procedure." "Procedure didn't save Eagle Convoy," she shot back. "Didn't stop the depot burning. He won't talk to you. He'll talk to me." Silence stretched. Finally, Hale gave a sharp nod. He and Decker stepped outside, leaving her alone with. The door clicked shut. The room seemed to shrink. Sat slowly, her hands clasped on the table so he couldn't see them shake. "You owe me the truth." Tilted his head. "Truth is dangerous. You of all people should know that. You hear too much, and suddenly everything you thought was solid becomes noise." "Start with the depot," she said, forcing each word steady. "Why?" "Because they were never going to let you find me," he said simply. "So I gave them a distraction. Fire for Falcon. Smoke to cover my signal. They would never suspect the one sitting in the cage with their golden ear." Her stomach twisted. "You were using me." His lips curved faintly. "No, I was shaping you, training you. You think I taught you to pick signals out of chaos. I was teaching you to hear the lies beneath the signal, to survive what's coming." Her fists tightened. "What's coming?" Leaned forward, his voice dropping. "Isn't just running raids, he's rewriting the map. Falcon is only one piece on his board. And you," his eyes met hers, steady, unnerving, "you are the piece that matters most. That's why I fed them your name. Because only by being hunted will you understand what it means to hunt." Her chest ached with fury. "You're insane." "No," he said gently, "I'm free." The door burst open. Decker stormed back in, dragging to her feet. "That's enough. He's not your teacher anymore, Ward. He's a traitor and he'll rot like one." Didn't flinch as MPs hauled him away. His final words echoed in his ears long after the door slammed shut. "You'll thank me when the noise clears." She stood frozen in the hallway, rage boiling under her skin. She wanted to run after him, to scream, to put a bullet between his eyes, to avenge the trust he had shattered. But Colonel Hale's voice cut through the storm. "Ward, walk with me." They stepped out into the night air. Smoke still hung over Falcon, the black skeleton of the depot glowing faintly. Soldiers moved in grim silence, hauling hoses, clearing debris. Hale stopped by the ruined wall, his gaze fixed on the flames. "What are you thinking, Corporal?" Swallowed hard, the truth burned on her tongue. "I want to kill him." Hale nodded slowly. "Good. That means you're human, but wanting and doing are different things. You pull that trigger in anger, you lose yourself before the war even begins." She stared at the fire, the heat stinging her eyes. "Then what do I do with it?" "Use it," Hale said. "Anger sharpens if you don't let it blind you." Made his choice. You make yours. Her chest rose with a trembling breath. "And my choice is—" Hale turned to her, his eyes hard but not unkind. "Stay Raven, stay focused. You think you've been a pawn, but you're more dangerous than he ever was. You can hear what others can't. That's why wants you. That's why turned. But if you stay the course, you'll turn this war." His words sank deep, heavy as stone. She wasn't sure she believed him, but she knew she couldn't walk away. That night she returned to the cage. She put the headset on, the static filling her skull. But now every crackle sounded different. Every voice carried a question. Was it real? Was it planted? Was it a lie? Had destroyed her trust. But in the ruins something else grew. Not innocence, not faith, something sharper. Resolve. At 200 she caught a fragment, a voice she'd never heard before. Calm, authoritative, speaking directly into the net as though it had been waiting for her. "Falcon's golden ear, we're coming for you." Her hand shook as she wrote the words. For the first time, she wasn't just listening to the enemy. The enemy was listening back. What did it mean when the enemy wanted you alive more than your own side did? Ward sat in the belly of a headset clamped to her ears, the thrum of rotor blades vibrating through her bones. Raven Team was packed in tight around her, double-checking his rifle with restless energy. Hunched over a tablet glowing faintly in the dark, Decker sitting silent with his jaw clenched. The red light inside the cabin painted every face in shades of blood. The mission brief had been short. Its network had shifted. A forward relay station hidden deep in the mountains, pumping signals across the border, coordinating raids. Raven would move in, cut it out, and extract hard intel. Simple words again, but knew better now. Nothing was simple. Hale's warning echoed in her head. The enemy is listening back. Her stomach knotted. Every second on the net, she wondered if they were hearing her heartbeat, her fear, her resolve. "Ward," Decker said over the rotor noise. "You lock in once we're boots down. Nothing else matters, clear." She nodded, clear. The bird dropped lower, banking hard. She pressed against the harness as mountains loomed black beneath them. Then came the thump of landing skids. The red light flipped green. "Go!" They spilled into the night, boots crunching rock, rifles raised. Cold mountain air cut her lungs, sharper than any desert wind. The relay sat hidden in a cleft of stone, its antenna barely visible against the stars. Lights flickered faintly inside a prefab structure, generator humming. The Ravens fanned out, took point, slung his gear, already pulling data cables from his pack, crouched low, headset on, antenna extended, ears tuned to the night. Static, then voices. "Raven inbound, small unit, protect the girl, do not harm her." Her blood turned to ice. "Decker," she whispered urgently. "They knew we were coming. They're giving orders. Protect the girl, do not harm her." Decker's head snapped around. His voice was a hiss. "Say that again." "They want me alive. They told their men not to harm me." Swore under his breath. Hell kind of war are we in, where the other side cares more about her breathing than we do? No one answered. Because a shadow moved at the ridge, then another, rifles glinted. The first shots cracked down the slope. Bullets sparked stone. The Ravens dropped to cover, returning fire. Curled low, headset still pressed tight, her notepad trembling under her hand as she wrote. 3 on the ridge, 2 flanking east. Orders are repeat, capture alive. Decker's rifle barked. They'll swarm the relay, move faster. Cursed softly, fingers flying over the tablet. 30 more seconds. They didn't have 30. A figure burst from the shadows, rushing directly. She froze until tackled him sideways, slamming the man into the rocks. A knife flashed. Snarled, driving his elbow down, finishing the fight with brutal finality. "Up," barked, dragging her to her feet. "Stay behind me. You hear anything, you say it." She nodded, throat dry, adrenaline flooding like fire. The firefight stretched and warped into chaos. Shadows swarmed, muzzle flashes lit the rocks. The Ravens fought like predators, controlled bursts, surgical kills. But for every hostile that fell, 2 more seemed to climb the slope. And all the while kept hearing the words. "Alive. Do not harm. Surround and close." They weren't trying to wipe Raven Team out. They were trying to peel it apart, to leave her standing. The relay finally went dead as yanked the core free. "Got it." "Move," Decker snapped. They fell back under fire, dragging between them. She hated it, hated being the one carried, hated being the prize. But she couldn't change it. Not here. The bird roared in low, rotors chopping the night. Raven fought a path to the clearing, bullets kicking dirt. Stumbled up the ramp, lungs heaving, ears still straining. And then she heard it. Not enemy chatter, not static. A single voice, calm, cutting through the net as though speaking straight to her. "Ward, stop running. You are not theirs, you are mine." Her chest seized. She tore the headset off, heart slamming. But the voice lingered in her head, burned into her skull. He had spoken her name, not through rumor, not through orders, directly. The lifted, Raven team leaned heavy in their seats, sweat-streaked, bloody, alive. Decker's eyes were hard as stone as he looked at her. "What did you hear?" Swallowed, her voice breaking. "He knows me, he spoke to me." The cabin went silent, even didn't crack a joke. Decker finally said what they were all thinking. "He doesn't just want you alive, he wants you in his hands." Back at Falcon, the weight of it crushed her. Hale listened, his face unreadable, scribbled furiously. "He's targeting her specifically," the analyst muttered. "That's leverage, that's bait, that's obsession." Sat frozen, her hands trembling in her lap. Her mind spun with his last words. "You'll thank me when the noise clears." Noise meaning lies, truth. All she knew was that wanted her alive, and that made her more than a soldier. It made her a target so valuable, the war itself seemed to tilt around her. And the worst part, deep down, in the part of her that still lay awake at night listening to echoes, she wondered why. What did know about her that she didn't even know about herself? What did it mean to face the man who had been speaking in your ear all along? Ward stood in the operations hangar, the air thick with jet fuel and tension. Colonel Hale's voice echoed off the steel walls. "This is it," made his move. "He's baiting us to come to him." The map lit up on the display. A valley across the border surrounded by cliffs, dotted with ruins from an old Soviet outpost. The comms traffic left no doubt it was deliberate. He wanted Falcon to hear. He wanted Raven to come. But above all, he wanted. "You don't have to go," Decker told her quietly as the team geared up. His face was grim, the lines of command carved deep. "If you step foot in that valley, you won't just be bait. You'll be the prize." Checked her rifle, the headset snug against her skull. "I've been the prize since the day I fixed that antenna. This isn't about wanting, it's about finishing." Slung his pack with a humorless grin. Hell of a way to graduate. Said nothing, just pressed an extra battery into her hand. His eyes told her more than words. Stay alive. They carried them into darkness. Stared out at the jagged landscape below, heart steady despite the storm inside her. Every rotation of the rotors brought her closer to the voice that had haunted her nights. The insertion was fast. Ropes down, boots striking dust. The valley yawned wide, its cliffs towering, shadows shifting like predators. The ruins loomed, broken concrete, rusted rebar, the skeletons of old wars waiting to birth a new one. They advanced in silence, his headset filled with static, then chatter, crisp, intentional. "She's here, hold fire, close the circle." Her skin prickled, she whispered into the mic. "They're everywhere, surrounding, holding fire for me." Decker cursed under his breath. "Stay tight, keep moving." The ravens pressed deeper. Then floodlights snapped on, blinding white against the dark. Figures rose from the ruins, rifles raised but not firing. And from the shadows he walked out. Amir. The photograph had not done him justice. His silver-streaked hair glinted under the lights, his posture tall, commanding. His eyes, those razored eyes, locked onto instantly, as though no one else existed. "Corporal Ward," he called, his voice carrying like steel wrapped in silk. "At last." Her chest tightened. The voice was the same one that had bled into her headset, the one that had whispered her name across mountains. Hearing it in the flesh felt unreal, like meeting a ghost she had never asked to know. "Drop your weapons," said, "all of you, this is not your fight." Decker's rifle stayed leveled. "Not happening." Smiled faintly. "Then you will all die for one girl. Is she worth it?" Dozens of rifles clicked in the dark. Raven held their ground but could feel the trap closing, the inevitability. She stepped forward before she could think, her voice steady. "Why me?" Smile widened. "Because you listen. You don't just hear. You understand cadence, meaning, truth. You have what your leaders fear most, a mind that cannot be controlled." Her hands trembled against her rifle. "So you want to control it instead?" "No," he said simply. "I want you to see. Falcon, Raven, your colonel, they are blind. They feed you lies about sides, about enemies. But you hear the signal beneath the noise, don't you? You've already begun to doubt." His words echoed in her skull. "You'll thank me when the noise clears." For a heartbeat, doubt did flicker. Falcon had used her as bait. Hale had told her to turn anger into a weapon. Even Decker had admitted she was nothing more than a piece on the board. But she remembered Eagle Convoy. Men she had never met, saved because she'd spoken when no one else believed her. She remembered the depot burning because chose betrayal over loyalty. She remembered bleeding on Echo Post, fighting to keep her alive. She met's eyes, her voice hard. "I'm not your piece, not Falcon's, not yours, mine." His expression tightened. For the first time, he looked less like a ghost and more like a man who could bleed. "Then bleed with them," he said coldly and dropped his hand. Gunfire erupted. The valley exploded with chaos. Muzzle flashes strobed. Bullets ricocheted off stone. The Ravens returned fire, roaring, ducking low over his gear. Decker hauled behind cover, shouting over the storm. "Ward, listen. Where are they moving?" She pressed the headset tight, forcing her fear down. Static, shouting, orders overlapping. She closed her eyes, filtering noise into meaning. "Two squads flanking left. Heavy gun right ridge." "Copy," Decker relayed, firing controlled bursts. Lobbed a grenade that lit the ridge in flame. Hacked the relay tower, forcing enemy comms into collapse. Kept feeding directions, every call turning the tide, every word keeping them alive. But was gone, slipped into the shadows. The battle dragged, brutal and long. When it ended, the valley floor was littered with bodies. Raven stood breathing hard, scraped, bloodied, but alive. His hands shook as she pulled the headset off. Her ears rang with silence now, louder than the gunfire. "Report," Decker demanded, scanning the ruins. She forced herself to speak. "Escaped. He wanted me alive, but when I refused, he chose the fight instead." Hale's voice crackled over the comm. "Understood. Extract immediately." As they lifted from the valley, stared down at the ruins. Was still out there, his voice still bleeding through the noise. The war wasn't over, but something inside her had shifted. She no longer felt like the invisible tech fixing antennas. She was the ear that heard what others missed, the one both sides wanted to claim. On the return flight, leaned close, sweat still streaking his face. "You scared the hell out of me back there, kid. Thought you were going to walk straight into his arms." She gave a faint, tired smile. "So did I." Handed her a flask of water. His quiet eyes met hers, steady, grounding. She drank, the taste of dust still clinging to her throat. Decker sat across from her, silent for a long time. Then he said, "You made your choice tonight. That's what makes you Raven." Her gaze drifted to the patch on her sleeve. Unseen, unheard, unbroken. The noise would never stop. The lies, the voices, the betrayals would keep speaking, keep hunting. But she knew now that she could choose which signals to believe, which truths to hold. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.